Hello, chefs. Good evening. We are back again. I am Isaiah, the young Jedi chef, here with the Dragon Warrior chef, German Lamb, and we will be your host for today's podcast. You are listening to a unique podcast where we will discuss tough yet real topics that need to be heard in the industry. In this podcast, you will hear the truth real, raw, and unfiltered. Today, we have the honor of having Chef Tanya Holland with us to talk about cooking with soul. I'm excited to get started and jump right in. So without further ado, I will let the star of our show, our guest, Chef Tanya Holland, introduce herself. Chef Tanya.
Thank you, Isaiah. It's great to be here. I'm Tanya Holland. I am a chef and I owned several restaurants. I closed my last one at the end of 2021, Brown Sugar Kitchen. I'm the author of 3 cookbooks, New Soul Cooking, Brown Sugar Kitchen, and California Soul. And I'm the chair of the James Beard Awards Committee, and I serve on the Board of Trustees and a member of Les Dames d'Escoffier, an international organization for women in food, beverage, and hospitality.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chef. So definitely an honor to have you a part of this podcast. So the topic that we're talking about today is soul food. When I think of soul food, I think of something that takes me back to a place of comfort. I think back to a place where I could truly and authentically be myself. As I begin to take my first bite into soul food, I close my eyes and my mind goes back to when I was 10 years old, sitting around the dinner table with my family, eating my mom's Dominican stew chicken with rice and beans. We all have our own definition of what soul food means to us. So this will lead us into our first question. What does soul food mean to you? What food or dish brings you back to childhood, or what takes you back to a good memory? Chef Tanya?
Yeah. So I do believe there is a universal definition to soul food, and every culture has their version. But soul food to me really is historically associated with the African American food experience, the food that was created by the Africans who were brought here enslaved, and some of the ingredients they brought with them, and some that were discovered here, and that fusion, as well as the food that got created with the migration of African Americans in this country. So you can find soul food in all areas of the United States, wherever you find African American populations. And my parents are both from the South, from Virginia and Louisiana. And a lot of my maternal family came out to California, which is why I feel at home here. And I think, the dishes that really just really to me, it's like, okay, this is soul food, is collard greens for one. There's not a lot of other cultures that eat collard greens the way, we do in soul food, African American soul food, and black eyed peas as well. I just feel, and yams. I feel like those 3
Mhm.
ingredients must be on the menu if you're talking soul food.
Has to be, Chef. That's definitely a staple. Collard greens. I love a good collard greens with the cornbread. It's perfect. Chef Lamb?
Well, you know what? I love this topic right here. And for all the viewers, for all the young chefs, all the future chefs, and also the veteran chefs, right? So when you're saying soul food and like, why is this Asian chef on this podcast? Like, what does he know about soul food, right? I'll call it the yin and yang, the chi. So another way, and every ingredient you just mentioned, Chef Tanya, and far as like people bring to this country and now they create something, right? So as far as for the Asian culture, I would say, you got rice, you got vegetables, you got a lot of grains, you got a lot of beans. And suddenly you have to know how to make that bean dish amazing, But then I realized it comes from the heart, it comes from the spirit. And it's
Yes.
something that I don't call it baking. It's something that, you're taught. And for me, my parents taught me what love was all about when you cook. That means every time I had a meal, no matter what it was. So you're talking about favorite dish. My mom would make a fish head, okay, a fish head, a fish head from the whitefish, the cod family. There would be onions, there would be potatoes, and it was like pan seared, and it would be braised, and I would eat that, and add with some rice to it, and I was like, oh my God, So to me, one way I call it like peasant food, and peasant food, if you think about it, is what you had in your community or what you had available from your family. So one way, you hear the word peasant, it makes you feel like, no, that's part of the life,
Hmm.
So for me, I have a lot of story.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah. Chef Tanya, I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying, no, that's great. Agreed. Yeah. It
Hmm.
is comfort. I think, like you said, Isaiah, the key is comfort, right?
Hmm.
This is the food that provides us with comfort.
Exactly. That food that makes her so happy. And I like how you said, Chef Lamb. It's really, it started off as peasant food, but really that's some of the greatest dishes that we have today were derived from that. Because that was where a family got to come together, and even though they might have not had much, is they came together and they made the best food possible. So I think as chefs, that's what also excites us the most, is being able to take that food that's so simple and turn it into something so great, and that goes back to our history and where we came from. So I think that's one of the greatest things about soul food. So thank you, chefs, for sharing your stories with us. As chefs, we have the creative freedom to develop our own recipes and come up with something new, kind of take that soul food and maybe put a twist on it while still maintaining the tradition and the basics of the dish. So how do you develop a recipe, and where does your motivation or inspiration come from? Chef Tanya?
For me, it depends on the context of, what I need the recipe for. Is it for my cookbook? Is it for a special event? Is it for the restaurant? Because I have to think about who's going to be executing it. Is it going to be a home cook? Is it going to be one of my line cooks? Is it going to be, you know, a magazine editor. And then I think about, do I need it to be seasonal? And then what ingredient am I excited about? And how do I want to maybe use it in a different way or unique way? And then I'll usually make a list of the ingredients and the flavors that I want to work with, and just kind of start playing around, with them. Whether it's like with a protein or if it's a vegetarian side dish. And I get inspired by, my chef colleagues when I dine out and I go to other restaurants and, I taste something delicious or there's a technique that I've never tried, then I think, how can I apply that and put my own spin on it?
Definitely. I think it's really important what you touched on, is taking a look at what other chefs do and what other colleagues do, and kind of take inspiration from that and say, okay, what can I change? What can I do to make it a little bit better, put my twist and make it unique? That is super, super important. So Chef Lamb, I know you call it freestyle. What's your method?
Well, you know what? Think about it. You have restaurant, then you have banquet food. So think about, imagine doing 50 or 100 dish, then suddenly you're going to do 1,000. So now you have to learn how to take the techniques, the preparations and methods and convert it where it's similar and is closest to the restaurant food that you're cooking to order. So, so to me, one would be, uh, beef brisket with turnip, right? So you got to think about, I could do that on the restaurant. It would be simple, but to do 1,000, so now you got to make sure that all your ingredients have the right portion control, from beef to garnishes to sauce. So now you got to use your your mind for measuring. The math comes in right here, and you got to think about, okay, am I using 1 cup per serving? So to me, it's really fun that, from a restaurant, from a la carte to banquet. So you could do it in, small quantity, or you could do for 1,000, or you could do for 5,000. I mean, there is no difference. You just have to kind of think how to compromise and make it, when the guests taste it, they fall in love.
Yeah, chef. That's a really, really good point. It's very difficult to kind of make it so that way when you do it for many, many portions, for it to be consistent and still beautiful. And the average person can't do that. So as chefs, that's why we're so different, and that's why we stand out. So and that's also why chefs have so much passion and love for what they do. So this is going to lead us to our next question. How did you develop your love for food and cooking? When did you know that this is what you were meant to do, Chef Tanya?
For me, like I've always cooked or spent time in the kitchen since I was a little girl with my family, and they had this gourmet cooking club, and so I was exposed to food from around the world at a young age with these themed dinner parties that they would host with other couples. And but then when I went to college, I learned that most of my friends did not know how to cook. So I started cooking for them. And that's when like that immediate gratification of providing somebody with like something that you made that they think is delicious and getting that feedback, it's, kind of becomes addictive. It was just like,
Mhm.
oh, this is cool. And then also just to see what you can do with humble ingredients, because in college, it wasn't like I was buying, caviar and, foie gras and, it was just like eggs, flour, probably wasn't even really buying butter. So just to be able to create something from, almost nothing is
Mhm.
really fun.
Definitely. And I love what you said is that immediate gratification when you see the person that you're cooking for enjoy your food. That's kind of one of the things that I look forward to most as a chef. And that brings me a lot of joy when you see that everything you put your work into, everything that you kind of gave all your time to, when the person you're sharing it with enjoys it. That's super, super important and super, super fulfilling as a chef. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? It all comes back to Anthony's Pier 4, and they are a brand name seafood restaurant. Anthony Athanas was the owner.
Mhm.
It was at the Seaport Hotel, and they had this little, like a mansion on the water, and I worked there, and I learned so much about, New England favorite, from clam chowder to oyster Rockefeller to shrimp scampi to, and then I learned about systems, and I was like, we did 5,000 for Mother's Day. So when you talk about cooking, right away, I learned you could do this efficient, but then there's a system in place. So far as what really got the love, I would say my parents. My parents show that love. Then by working at these different places, they show me about systems. And from there, as a chef, now you know how to have uh, time management, be efficient, and be effective in covers in and out, right? You get an order, and the next thing you know, pick up. So
Mhm.
that would be it right there.
Definitely. And yeah, love I think is the one of the most important things you said. Because if you're cooking without love, if you don't have no passion when you cook the food, it won't turn out good. It's all about, and I even could tell with myself sometimes about cooking and I'm in a bad mood, the food it's not gonna turn out as good. It's when you cook with love and when you have that passion for what you do is when the food comes out the best. So keeping that soul, keeping that passion is super, super important in cooking in general. So, to wrap it up, food not only has an impact on those that you are serving, but has an impact with those you're sharing it with, and it has an impact on you as well. How do you believe that we express ourselves through food? How do you believe that we can impact others by the food that we create? Chef Tanya?
Well, I think a big impact is, what we decide to purchase, where it comes from. Like we support small farmers, our local purveyors, our local farmers, sustainable, raised meats and fishes. I mean, we have to start doing more of that. I feel like, that's a great way to, make a big difference. Yeah.
Definitely, yes. Supporting our smaller communities, our farmers, because they're what keeps the industry going for sure. Without them, there is no us, there is no restaurants, there is no nothing. So definitely supporting our local businesses and bringing business to them is super, super important.
Yeah.
Chef Lamb?
Well, you know what? That's a great point, piggybacking from farms to tables, local vendors. And I would say in today's generation of the culinary hospitality profession is very challenging. And besides, the vendors, now you have cost of goods, but then when you buy all this amazing food, you bring it into your kitchen. Now the chef has to go, okay, what am I going to do with onions, carrot, celery, grains, and protein. What am I going to make where suddenly my community are going to be here 2 or 3 times a week or 4 times a week, you know? And when you talk about soul food cooking, to me, I always want something that's like corned beef and cabbage, you know? Is one of my favorites because it's one pot, right? You take one big pot, you put all these ingredients at different stages of doneness, and now you have this amazing melting pot of broth with flavor. And now your team actually feels the love. They're like, yeah, but you never tasted my corned beef and cabbage. You know what I mean? So in one way, when it comes to it's like not all so are equal, you know. So that's why I really use the word love, and that's where it comes from the individual. If that individual, you know, respect itself with sanitation, safety, you know, your food, it's going to be clean. Your flavors are going to be clean. Your work environment is going to be clean. You know, speaking with your coworker, everything's going to be just clean, and you're able to see everything. But then you're able to smell with your nose and with your stomach. So,
yeah, definitely.
the new for this generation of chefs, so that's what I would say. You know, you want to work on your soul. Art, music, great way to start.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
So a little fun question to, I guess, throw in there is, if you could learn how to make any dish in the world, or if you want to try it, any dish in the world that you haven't tried before or you don't know how to make, what dish would it be, Chef Tanya?
Oh wow. What dish would I make? I don't know. You know, I think it would probably be something from Asian cooking, probably either, you know, Thai, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, any of that, like those ingredients that you know, in my pantry, I might have sesame oil and soy, but I don't have like, you know, the techniques. I haven't trained in how to, you know, pull all that together. And I love those flavors. So probably somewhere in that realm.
I would have to agree with you, Chef. I would love to learn how to do more Asian food, more stuff like that. I love eating it, but as when it comes to making it, I definitely need training and technique for that. So that's
Yeah.
definitely a good one. Chef Lamb?
I have
Oh, sorry.
rolled some I was gonna say I have
Uh-huh.
rolled some sushi. So I
Yeah,
definitely
of course. Yeah, sushi is fun to make. I've done sushi before too. Yeah, sushi is definitely very, very fun. Chef Lamb?
You know what? You're gonna laugh on this. A great hoagie, a nice Italian hoagie.
well, if you make it, I'm coming over to eat it because that's
Okay,
like yeah,
and
that's my
for
favorite.
me,
Yeah.
I would have the prosciutto cotta. I would have the hot ham. You know, some rosemary ham right there, some mortadella. Then I'll make myself a nice chili pepper relish. Then I get some lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and a little mayonnaise. And someone's gonna say mayonnaise. I said, well, yeah, mayonnaise. Then I drizzle it with a little oil and vinegar. And to me, that would be my goal. And the reason why I say that, you know how easy it is to clean and eat that versus if you want me to make a ramen noodle or a stir fry or a steak, I gotta do some cleaning. If I want
Yeah.
to eat, I want everything right in front of me, cut the bread, you know what I mean, and just layer. And to me, that is my go-to food.
Awesome. Yeah, good. Nice hoagie. You can't go wrong with that, Chef, at all. At all. So before we end it off, do you guys have any last piece of advice for any chefs out there, any young chefs looking to get into the industry, that are currently in the industry, maybe struggling to find their passion? Any advice for any chefs out there, young chefs, current chefs? Chef Tanya?
Well, I really like what Chef Lamb said about working clean. That is so essential. And I feel like it's not emphasized enough to develop those good habits. Also, I tell people write everything down. Like, do not rely on your memory. You know, I still have notebooks where, you know, I would write down like how the station was set up and do a little drawing and write mise en place lists and write recipes. And, you just refer back to them, as you develop, and it's just good training.
Definitely. Thank you, Chef. Writing things down definitely help, especially my memories. Everything's everywhere all the time. It's definitely good to write stuff down, and have a plan for sure. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? I'm listening to Chef Tanya and think about the generations and think about your generation there, Chef Isaiah. And to me, um, my foundation was the Ritz-Carlton Boston Hotel, French cuisine, and from there it evolved to where we are right now, 2024. And I look at it, it's like creating a hybrid. You respect, you understand tradition, but then you take the current and the future and you really simplify it. In cooking, I really says 1, 2, 3, really 1, 2, 3. You get the ingredient, boom, 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 cook, and you eat it. And you could do that with French cuisine, but you have to understand philosophy and principles of cooking. And that's what I did when I started my journey. I would read. I would be a bookworm. I would have like every culture around the world, and I would read. And when you read, when you're young, all that stuff will actually come to life as you mature. So another thing as being a chef is about maturity, because there's a lot of things that you're going to taste and you're going to cook. You're going to go, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. But then eventually it's going to fall in place, because now as you start off, you're a mentee, but now you're a mentor. So like I always said to the young and to the veteran, is finding that love that you had from the beginning, but now how do you reset yourself of what's going on now?
Yeah, that's a great point, Chef. Thank you so much. It has been an honor to have both of you guys on this call today, especially our guest, Chef Tanya Holland. Great stories, great advice. We thank you and we appreciate you so much. This podcast is creating history. It's creating icons. So it won't only affect those that are listening, but it will affect those that are impacted by those that are listening. So we thank you so much for being a part of our journey. It has been a true honor, and see you guys on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Chef Tanya.